Hey everybody, welcome back after a long absence of my posting. I'm going to give you a quick update, and then we're going to take a look at some figures that I painted recently for a campaign that I'm running. Um, I'm going to give you a quick update. I haven't been on YouTube for a while now because, frankly, I just got so bogged down and depressed with work and that sort of thing that I just couldn't do it. Um, which, if you're doing this YouTube stuff and you reach that point, you just have to take a break and step back and then come back to it when you feel like you're able. And in my case, I went through 3 or 4 years of really bad funk with a lot of you don't know, I was recruiting for the Army. So I had an Army career and I was a soldier, and then I transitioned to being an Army civilian, and I was doing some recruiting for an officer training program at universities, and and I also taught the military history class, which I enjoyed. But the recruiting is the primary emphasis, and it was just really bad for a good long stretch for about coming out of COVID for three or so years. It was really bad, and that picked up sometime around mid-November. The recruiting turned around a little bit for us, and then we actually ended up rebuilding our program to about pre-COVID levels, which really made me happy and took some of the stress off. But I was still doing an hour commute one way, and that's 2 hours your day. There's really not much left of me. And then it turned out that with some government downsizing, they were offering early retirements to those who were eligible, and I was eligible. Um, I took it. I jumped on that bad boy just as quick as I could, and now I'm going to be working for myself, building black powder rifles. Actually, black powder rifles and Fowlers, probably more Fowlers actually. Doing that for myself and selling products related to that, and I'm doing some writing related to that, and I'm probably going to do some fiction writing as well. And it's really kind of been a rebirth for me. I just wanted to explain where I've been and what my state of mind was. And, don't be like me. Don't be the guy who, refuses to seek any help or, whatever, because I didn't. I never have. I won't. But that's really not a good place to be in, because I've kind of realized what a funk I was in reality. So that's what I'm up to, and I'm running an American Revolution campaign. We just set off on it, and that relates to the figures I'm going to show you, as you probably figured out from the title. The campaign is over on a separate channel, so that this one isn't muddied with that. I made that mistake in the past. If you want to follow the campaign, it's the great AWI Wargame channel on YouTube. And I'm going to just post turn updates there and some battle reports. Nothing super major, not really long videos or anything. But and I have a Facebook page as well. So it's the great AWI Wargame Facebook page. It's public. So you can follow that campaign there. I won't take up this channel with it, but I will show you stuff I've painted for that channel here. And I'll talk about those figures and why I chose certain colors or whatever. All right, so what we're doing in that campaign for Wargame Rules is Age of Reason 2 by Todd Kirshner and Dale Wood. These were great rules back in the day. I know there's like a version 3 out now. I haven't played it. I don't own it. Probably should, but sometimes you go with what you know, right? And then we're also using muskets and tomahawks for the small skirmish games. Muskets and Tomahawks 2, although I'm a little torn. There are things about the first version that I like as well, so there might be some blending going on. I also have Sharp Practice, and I do plan on using that for a couple skirmish games, large skirmish games as well. So that's the big update on where I've been, what I've been doing, and I'm back for good. I'm going to post as regularly as I can. My plan is to get videos out on Mondays. Mondays or Sundays, I haven't quite figured that out, but Sundays might be better. But if I'm not going into work, um, maybe Mondays work too. I don't know. If you have a preference, post down below on when you'd prefer to watch video. So that's it. Let's go take a look at what I painted, because these are pretty cool. I used a few different Perry packs of mounted figures, and I think you're gonna like what I came up with. So I'm gonna turn this camera around, and we're gonna face it onto the wargaming table here, and I'm gonna show you some figures, and that's gonna be awesome. Hold on one sec. All right, folks, so here's what I've been working on. I'm gonna move that more to the center. I've been painting some mounted militia for the American Revolution, the American War of Independence for some folks. So Southern militia, often because of the agricultural nature of the region and the distances involved in traveling to where they're needed, often the Southern militia would come horse-mounted and then fight on foot. Sometimes they fought mounted. Also, a lot of people don't know is there were militia mounted units and militia dragoons and mounted rangers and that type of thing. So I found in our campaign that we really needed an irregular mounted force. Now, I cheated a little bit. I used the blue-faced white color scheme for those who are in uniform, like this gentleman or this one, because there were a couple of units, specific units, that wore that uniform color in the South. And also George Rogers Clark, in his move towards Vincennes in Indiana, present-day Indiana, believe it or not, he attacked a British fort called Vincennes way out there. It was back in the Northwest Territories days. That was the far, far, far frontier, and it was a very French-influenced area because French traders had been there for a long time, and the British set up an outpost out there, which George Rogers Clark, who was a commander of Virginian troops, attacked, and he had a mounted troop which was uniformed in blue-faced white. So I kind of cheated. I could get multiple uses out of these. I could use them for mounted rangers or militia or whatever. So I'll kind of talk through what I have here. Some of these figures, like this gentleman here, he came from the Mounted Colonel's pack, and he's in a hunting shirt. Now, that's not buckskin. These hunting shirts that you see on these figures, those would be a fabric called linen, and they would frequently be dyed in other colors. This gentleman right here, he is in brown, but that's probably a walnut dye on that linen shirt. So one of the common mistakes that wargamers make is they assume that that is buckskin. You won't actually see buckskin shirts during this era and in these campaigns. You will see some doeskin breeches. Some of the leather breeches made of hide were actually very, very common. They were kind of the Levi's jeans of the day, but they didn't use them for jackets and for frocks. Those were linen. So you do see it with mountain men, and that's where I think people get a little confused. Actually, you could wet a buckskin jacket, and it would be somewhat an armor against arrows and stabbing weapons. And that's the Rocky Mountain fur trade. Folks actually did that before a combat was imminent. They would wet their buckskins if they could. So I digress, but here are my mounted militia, and I'll kind of walk you through the different packs. This fella here, as I said before, he's from the mounted Continental Colonel's box that the Perrys do. He's the fellow that's wearing a hunting frock. You also see some mounted militia figures like this fellow here or this one. And they have one box of those. I wish they had another box. So Perry's, I doubt you're going to listen to this, but if you have another box, that would be awesome, because it would just add more variety. I had to kind of pluck a militia mounted officer out of the mounted militia officers box to add sort of a second officer to the unit, because I needed 12 guys and I didn't want to double up on these riflemen here because I didn't feel that was appropriate. And the other thing I did was, with those mounted militia, I added plastic arms. Some of you who have done the plastic parries, you'll recognize this arm right here on this fellow in the green frock coat. That is normally in the plastic parry packs. So he has a Fowler tucked under his arm. And then you'll see this gentleman right here. He has a plastic long rifle in his hand there that I plucked out of one of the plastic boxes, and that worked out great as well. Kind of added some curly maple stock to it, if you could see. That was always, that's fun to do. You just use your different colored contour paint. So in this case, I think he used like a wildwood brown or something, and then that fur reddish color contour paint over that to give it sort of an iron nitrate kind of look on there. So I also used the mounted rifleman pack. The problem with those, with this unit, is largely the unit is in a charging pose. So I didn't want to go too heavy on these mounted riflemen, even knowing they're perfectly adequate for Southern militia. They're in very relaxed poses, like they're on a long journey instead of, charging into combat. This guy here, he appears to be, scouting. He's kind of edging over a ridge looking for those deer and elk that, they're professional hunters. They're going to hunt for the hides and that sort of thing. So those are my mounted militia from many different packs. And that's why I use the color schemes that I used. I kind of give you a 360 on these. I put a bucktail in this rifleman's hat. I believe that's probably what it was intended to be. So white-tailed deer, which are the deer that inhabit the east coast of America, well, all the way out to the Rockies. They just they become a little less common in some areas in the West. And in some areas in the West, they don't exist at all, but it's the most prominent deer in North America. They have a white tip to their tail, so the fur is often like a reddish brown, and then it had that white tip kind of poking out underneath that fur. So for those of you who aren't familiar, that's a good way that you can paint that type of thing on your figures. I know in the Civil War you have the Pennsylvania bucktails as well, who would do that, and there are other units that did that as well. So that's how you paint those. So I hope you like these. A mounted militia unit may not be the highest quality kind of unit out there, as far as, they're not going to take on Napoleon's Polish Lancers anytime soon, but they add a mobile unit that could be dismounted if you play them right, and could still do an adequate job as mounted cavalry in a campaign where largely there's an absence of cavalry. So I hope you like these. I hope maybe they gave you a few ideas for your own figures. And if you have any suggestions on how I could do this better, as far as videos or whatever, I realize that, sometimes I ramble and sometimes I get into the historical dirt where you don't want to go. But, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you enjoyed the figures. One last thing. I did put my trumpeter in reverse colors, so the Americans did do that. If they could, they would. So when you're painting your Continentals, if you can put them in reverse colors, do it. Sometimes you have to do a little research on that. Maybe look at reenactor photos, because a unit might have had lottery coats where, they might have some blue-faced red, some brown-faced red, and then the modeler is kind of left with a question of, well, how do I model that? In that case, I personally would be inclined to do a red coat faced blue, because the facing color was red, and brown isn't typically a color that, they would have put a drummer in or a fifer in. unless they just had to because they wanted to put them in a uniform. But supplies being what they were, in general, I would go with reverse colors for your folks. So I've got my trumper in white faced blue, and then my trooper in blue faced white. So there you have it, gentlemen. I probably went a little long. Keep an eye out for my next video, which will probably be on some Perry British Ranger figures. So look forward to that. I need to finish up those guys, and then I will post a video here in a few days. So I hope you all are well, and I hope you enjoy the video. Thanks for watching. Bye.